A typical day in the life of a Muslim during Ramadan is active, engaging, and disciplined. This is because the religion of Islam itself promotes a dynamic and energetic lifestyle. Today we have an interesting program on a variety of subjects sure to keep you engaged and energized. Join me, your host Umair Khan, as I listen to a captivating convert story, and we will also be introduced to an enlightening book that is relevant now more than ever. And towards the end of our program, I, along with you, will learn how to get rid of that uncomfortable back pain that bothers so many of us every now and then. Stay tuned to Ramadan with MTA. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for joining us on another episode of Ramadan with MTA. We are here at the MTA International Studios in Canada. We have a great lineup of interesting discussions that we will be getting into. But before we do that, we will be listening to a tilawat from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد خلقناكم ثم صورناكم ثم قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس لم يكن من الساجدين.
And we did create you, and then we gave you shape. Then said we to the angels, submit to Adam. And they all submitted, but Iblis did not. He would not be of those who submit.
Welcome back. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very interesting program lined up on various topics and different discussions. But before we get into those topics, as you can see, I'm here with a good friend, missionary Adam Alexander Sahib. So, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me here.
So, Adam Sahib, I wanted to start the conversation. You're currently serving as a local missionary for Vaughan Jamaat. And I'm sure your work is probably a little bit different from previous years with the pandemic and all of that. So how has generally the missionary work been going during the pandemic?
Well, usually like my responsibilities would be leading prayers and doing the dars after prayers, but a lot of the families are doing that themselves now because we can't be together in the mosques. We're encouraged to continue that at home. That just because this pandemic has prevented us from going to the mosque does not mean that we should forget that our home is also a place of worship. And so in the homes, the children are doing the azan, the fathers are doing the durus. It's a very beautiful thing that the mosque has moved into the house and they're continuing on the practice.
Definitely. What I usually tell a lot of people when people outside the Jamaat talk to us about how we're practicing during the pandemic, I like to usually say that because of the pandemic, we actually have more imams in the Jamaat now, right? Because parents and fathers, they have to lead prayers and stuff. So, Adam Sahib, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Right when I found out, I'll have a chance to sit with you and talk to you, right? So the topic that we wanted to discuss today is the creation of man. And I'm especially looking forward to this conversation because your perspective is a lot, it's very different compared to many of us who have been born and raised as Ahmadis, right? So I wanted to start this conversation off with, on the topic of creation of man. Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that the main purpose of our creation is to worship Allah, right? To recognize God. Now, when we kind of reflect on that, teaching, like that's the purpose of life, right? And when I think about, our purpose, sometimes I kind of look around the world and people are indulged in materialism, money, property, cars, And I think to myself, like, how are people going to, you know, instill the magnitude and importance of that purpose of life, which is to recognize our Creator? So, you know, I wanted to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, first off, the answer to that question is so important that people are making millions of dollars off answering the purpose of our lives, why are we here? All of that is getting people rich because it's such a sought after question. Right. And as you mentioned, the answer to that was in one verse of the Holy Quran. Yeah. So it's more deeper than that. In the word ibadat, worship, it's not just us going to the mosque and fulfilling our 5 daily prayers. The ibadat is everything else, like our morals, the way we conduct each other, our reformation, our relationships. All of these things are under that umbrella of ibadat, and Islam gives us all those lessons. So the greatest book for answering that question would be the entire Holy Quran, but in fact, just getting that tranquility of a simple answer is found in this verse that you mentioned.
Right, right. And I love the fact that Allah Ta'ala, right to the point, He lets mankind know what the purpose of our life is. And we see many people trying to search. And that's an interesting point you bring up, that a lot of people are actually, you know, trying to write self-help books trying to answer that question. But alhamdulillah, in Islam, we found that answer. Now, Adam Sahib, very curious, you know, me being a born Ahmadi, raised, you know, in the Jamaat, sometimes we don't understand, you know, what the experience is like for someone as yourself who went through a religious journey, right? And this was new information for me. I never knew, but a couple of days ago when, you know, I had a chance to talk to you over, you know, the phone, you had mentioned that you were born and raised in a very devout Jehovah's Witness family, and your journey led you towards Sunni Islam, and then eventually it brought you towards Islam Ahmadiyyat. And I like to point out the fact that you didn't just stop there. You went a step further, dedicated your life, devoted your life, and currently you're, you know, serving as a local missionary in Vaughan, very close to where we are here. And so I'm very curious, you know, related to the topic that we're talking about, creation of man. I want to know, like, how your perception changed from, you know, being in a Christian community, then non-Ahmadi Muslim perspective, and how your perspective changed and evolved, you know, about the purpose of life, worship, you know, the creation of man. So I'm very interested to know how that journey was for you.
Well, some of us may not know that Jehovah's Witnesses are a little different than mainstream Christian faiths, but there's a lot of similarities. So you could say I had like the general pillars of Christianity understood, but it never felt complete. You know, just like when you finish elementary school, you feel like there's more to do. You have to go to college, university. I always had this feeling that there was more to know, but I felt that this is the only place I'm going to get that. When that journey came to an abrupt halt, and I spent from 14 onwards kind of pursuing a direction of my own, I maintained a relationship with God, because it was this idea that I was seeking God, not like the community or the building, the house to worship. I was just seeking God Himself, and to be honest, I was seeking whoever could explain God the best. So I was looking for answers about God from various faiths. It just never occurred to me that I was going to learn so much about God from the Islamic faith. I had never thought of that as an option, actually. But when I read the Holy Quran, I never read a book that explained God in such a beautiful way as the Holy Quran. So one thing that attracted me to Islam was that since I desired to know who my God was, I found that the greatest explanation was in the Quran. I never found a book that talked so much about His attributes, about what He does, and in that comfort, I learned attributes like Al-Rafiq, that He was my friend, Al-Wadud, that, you know, He loves me, and all of these things gave me tranquility that I became convinced that, yes, I want to be a Muslim. After that, I didn't know that there was going to be differences among Muslims, and I actually had to choose which branch to be a part of. But along that line, when I ended up finding myself in an Ahmadiyya mosque, it just further increased as I was learning more and more about the Islamic faith, but I was learning from a unique perspective now.
Right. I remember when I was speaking to you on the phone, I found it so interesting, and I feel like it's very important for a lot of Ahmadis, especially, the fact that we're so, involved in Tabligh, and sometimes new converts come into the community. And you said something so interesting. You said that you went into an Ahmadi mosque, and you would hear the Murabbi say something, and he would say, Hazur Ayyadullah Ta'ala bin Nasr al-Aziz, or Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and you would kind of blank out like when the Arabic would come. But then you told me that after that, whatever the Imam said would click to you and it would make sense to you.
Yeah, I definitely developed an affinity with what the quote was, but definitely I had no idea who they were quoting. As you said, when they would say Hazrat Khalifatul Masih or Hazrat Masih Maud, I had no idea that they were even saying a person. And then when they would say something after that, I found that that I got a connection with that they were explaining, in essence, the Islam that my heart was after. And I didn't know that I was really after that, but I was building this relationship with these perspectives that I had never actually found among Christians, among different sects of Christians, and including the Muslims that I was around. I never heard these types of explanations or these types of beauties of Islam presented.
That's really interesting. I'm loving this conversation. We'll continue it, but to our viewers, we're going to take a short break to listen to a hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then inshallah we will be continuing this very interesting discussion.
عن جابر قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أعطيت خمسا لم يعطهن أحد قبلي نصرت بالرعب مسيرة شهر وجعلت لي الأرض مسجدا وطهورا وأحلت لي الغنائم ولم تحل لأحد قبلي وأعطيت الشفاعة وكان النبي يبعث إلى قومه خاصة وبعثت إلى الناس عامة. Jabir, may Allah be pleased with him, narrates that the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, I have been granted 5 distinctions which none of the prophets were granted before me. Firstly, I have been reinforced with awe extending as far as a month's journey. Secondly, the entire earth has been made for me a mosque and a means of purity. Thirdly, the booty of war has been made lawful for me. It was never made lawful before me. Fourthly, I have been granted the honor of intercession with the Lord. And fifthly, while prophets before me were commissioned to their particular people, I have been sent to the entire mankind.
Welcome back. As you know, we were having a very interesting discussion. Adam Saad, we just heard a hadith about the 5 distinctions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And something that was coming to my mind was that quotation of Jesus al-Islam in the Gospels, where he said, I have much more to say to you, more than you can bear. But when the Spirit of truth comes, that prophecy that a law-bearing prophet would come. And one of the things highlighted in this hadith is that one of the distinctions of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is that he has been sent for all people. And I found that, a type of link with your story, because you're coming from a Christian background. And, we've learned that Jesus al-Islam he came for a certain people, but the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's message was for all mankind. And I'm curious to know, how that message had an impact in your journey towards Islam.
Well, as I was trying to, confirm everything, actually, when I did hear this for the very first time, I just kind of quickly Googled it, that did any other religious founder ever claim this, unique thing that they were for the whole of mankind? And you won't find it. Buddha alayhi salam or Jesus alayhi salam, no prophet or founder of any religion made this claim. So, it was a quick thing to be able to check, and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the only prophet who came for all mankind.
Very good. So the next thing I wanted to continue that conversation we were having about the creation of man, and the Holy Quran alludes to the fact that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was the first human being that Allah Ta'ala had communication through revelation, right? So I wanted to touch a little bit on revelation. Revelation again is a topic that you know, a lot of people kind of shy away from. They say it's stuff from the past. So I wanted to ask you, especially considering, you know, the journey you had, what do you feel, like, how do you feel revelation is significant today, and how do you think it applies to ordinary people today?
Well, one thing I learned in school is that in biology and anthropology is that humans have been evolving and their faculties have been improving. You know, our hearing, our sight, our language, our abilities have all been improving over time. And as the Promised Messiah ﷺ said, that our spirituality, our spiritual development and our physical development are linked. So as one has been improving, so has our spirituality, to the point, as you said, that man was able to receive revelation from God. But when I was a Christian, I had the understanding that that doesn't happen anymore. And unfortunately, when I was learning about Islam from the Sunni perspective, I had also heard that that doesn't happen anymore. But when I had heard that the Promised Messiah ﷺ was receiving revelations from God, I became very interested in who that person is and wanting to learn about that person. And I wanted to become very close to that person, because for Allah to speak to someone is not uncommon. But for Allah to speak to someone so much, to have such a relationship, that person had to be so special that I myself wanted to build a relationship with that person.
Right. I remember when I started studying in Jamia and I opened a book called Tazkira. The first story just blew me away. And it was, you know, related to Revelation, and it was about how the Prophet Messiah ﷺ, when at a very young age, he saw, you know, a dream of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu. Very emotional. It was really amazing for me to read that, and definitely, like, ordinary people are definitely impacted by, you know, somebody having that many revelations. So, you know, I could go on with this discussion forever. It's very interesting. But the last quick thing I wanted to ask you was what part of the message, or what was it about the message of the Promised Messiah ﷺ that had that impact on you, that led you towards, you know, not only Ahmadiyya Islam, but dedicating your life for the cause?
Well, that initial thing was that the level of devotion that is required of us by the Promised Messiah ﷺ, or in fact that is mentioned over and over again in the Holy Quran, the Promised Messiah ﷺ really asked us of that. He echoed that message that we should devote our lives. And what I found interesting is that there's so many members of the community who are devoting their lives, but they also have a day job. They go to work 9 to 5 or even later, and then they come to the Jamaat in the evening to the offices, and they're doing more work. And I have to keep up with them, you know, like I'm doing this all day, but I was just so impressed to see that I also wanted to do that work, but I couldn't do it as they did it. I couldn't have my feet in both ponds, you could say. I had to choose one, and I chose devoting my life. And I'm very impressed and amazed that there are people who can do their day job and then do so much Jamaat work in the evenings.
So Adam Saab, thank you so much for that very enlightening conversation. And honestly, me being a born and raised Ahmadi, when we hear conversations like that, it's actually very faith inspiring for many of us. So thank you for that. And those of you who are at home, as I had promised earlier, we have very interesting you know, segments lined up for today's program. But before I go on to the next you know, segment, Adam Saab, I wanted to ask you, I know you're from Western Canada. I'm also from British Columbia, currently posted there. But I wanted to ask you, have you ever been to the Yukon territory?
No, I've never been to the Yukon.
Okay, so the Yukon territory, beautiful place. I had a chance to go there once. It's a place of Canada that many people have actually not visited. So I'm going to take our viewers on for a journey to Western Canada, to the Yukon territory. So I had met a very nice khadim there, Abdullah Sahib. And Abdullah Sahib is with us. Abdullah Sahib, are you there? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Rabbi Sahib.
Abdullah Sahib, it's so good to see you. I see that, you know, in the background, it's definitely the Yukon territory. I wanted to ask you, for a lot of our viewers who have never been to the Yukon territory, if you could just give some information, general information about the Yukon territory.
Ji, for sure, Rabbi Sahib. So yes, the Yukon territory is it's a territory that not many people have heard of, actually. When I tell people about me being in the Yukon territory, they don't know where that is. So I often reference Alaska, because I'm just about 2 hours away from Alaska from where I am at the moment. The Yukon Territory is the northwesternmost territory of Canada, and it's actually also a very mountainous area. The Yukon Territory has some of the largest mountains in all of North America. In fact, actually, the second biggest mountain in all of North America is here in the Yukon. I reside in Whitehorse, which is the capital of the Yukon, and it's also the only city in the Yukon. All other places are referred to as towns, and Whitehorse has a population of about 33,000 people, and the entire territory has a population of about 43,000. Fun fact, actually, even though it's a cold area, it gets in the winter time, it gets to around I've seen minus 49 actually. And the average temperature is usually about minus 20. It's in the negative 20s. Fun fact, even though it's a cold area, we actually have the world's smallest desert, just about an hour away from where I am at the moment. It's not a hot desert, but it is a desert. It's classified as a desert. Another thing actually is, actually, I forgot what I was going to say, so I'll have to cut it all out.
No problem. You mentioned like the temperature. I just wanted to make sure that our viewers properly heard that. Whitehorse, Yukon Territory. Tell us again what the average temperature is in the winter seasons.
Like I said, in the winter time, it's about on average minus 20. It's in the negative 20s. And I have seen minus 49 with wind chill in the past winter. And winters are very long, but summers are short but beautiful, very beautiful. And the longest days of the summer have about 22 hours of sunlight. So it gets, they get pretty long. And yeah.
Jazakallah so much for that. So I'm wondering, what's like the Jamaat history in the Yukon Territory? Are there other Ahmadis there? If you could just shed some light on that.
We don't actually have, I'm actually the only person up here in the Yukon. So we don't have any more members up here, but I'm very connected with the Abbotsford Jamaat as well as the Prince George Jamaat. My father actually lives in Prince George, so I'm connected with his Jamaat quite a bit. But up here in the Yukon, we don't have an actual Jamaat. We have people, we do have a lot of the members from the Lower Mainland come up here for events such as the World Religious Conference. And that's usually a pretty big event that's broadcasted, and it usually has a very good turnout. So I do see the members once a year.
Wow, that's amazing. So just the fact that you're the only Ahmadi in the Yukon Territory, a natural question that I have for you, how do you stay connected with the rest of the Jamaat?
Yeah, so the great thing about, one of the greatest things about Jamaat is that we have MTA, which can be seen from all over the world. So being up here in the Yukon, in the corner of the world, I still have access to to watch the MTA programs. I do use the internet quite a bit for that, so it's very good in that sense.
Jazakallah. And how do you do Ramazan, in the Yukon?
Again, like I said, it's I actually follow the Vancouver timing for Ramadan. I follow the timing of the Vancouver Jamaat. It's good. Me and Abu keep in touch quite a bit, and so usually when we do Sehri and Iftar, we usually touch base for Sehri and Iftar at least in the day, and then whatever I'm eating, he'll ask me what I'm eating, what I've made for myself. So it's been like a regular Ramadan, but it's just obviously by myself alone, right? So, but having the technology that we have nowadays, it's great to be able to connect with the people I want to connect with, and yeah, it's been good.
Jazakallah so much for that. That was so interesting. I hope the best for you, and inshallah, sooner than later, you have some other members of the Jamaat move so you are not.
Jazakallah, Jazakallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So there we have it, folks. We just met Abdullah in the Yukon territory. And as I promised, now we're going from the tip of Western Canada to the tip of Eastern Canada. And here we have with us Sadr Saab, Newfoundland. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So Sadr Saab, I see that beautiful background. You're talking to us from St. John, Newfoundland. I wanted to ask you, especially for our viewers, if you could give some background about Newfoundland, its location, population.
All right, Jazakallah for having me. Yeah, Newfoundland is one of the 4 provinces we also know as Atlantic provinces. We are the easternmost province in Canada. We were the last province to join Canada. We joined in 1949, and you know, it's an island. So considering the circumstances, we are physically distancing from Canada. Yeah.
Jazakallah. Sadr Saab, I wanted to ask you, you know, we've always heard about Jamaat Newfoundland. Can you tell us some background about the Jamaat, when it was established, your mission house or mosque, if you have one there?
All right, Jazakallah. So, Jamaat Ahmadiyya officially was established in Newfoundland in 2005. Before that, Ahmadis, they were here, but they were not in enough number to have a Jamaat, so they were under a different Jamaat. But then in 2005, Jamaat Ahmadiyya Newfoundland chapter was properly established. And now we have a tajneed of around 30 people. And by the grace of Allah, last few years ago, actually 2 years ago, we bought our first mosque, and we are under the process of getting it renovated. And inshallah, in the mid of this year, we will have that mosque up and running. And hopefully by that time, we will be able to say that we have mosques in either corners of Canada, from Vancouver to St. John.
MashaAllah, Sadr Saab, that's great news. Inshallah, one day we get an opportunity to see that beautiful mosque being built in Newfoundland. I wanted to ask you, with the pandemic situation, what is Jamaat Newfoundland doing to celebrate Ramadan?
Well, as you know, because of pandemic, Ramadan activities, we were not able to do much in the previous year. We are hoping that by the time our mosque is up and running, we have pandemic under control, by hope of getting vaccinated as well. And we are planning that all of us will be doing our at least couple of namazes in Jamaat with Jamaat, and probably somebody will be taking part in all the other itikaf activities that we are planning. So I'm hoping that we can make the most of this mosque in this Ramadan. But as you know, it all depends on how the situation with COVID evolves.
Inshallah, we hope things get better. Sadr Saab, I can't, I have to ask you, I see a very beautiful landscape behind you. I'm wondering if you could show all the viewers the landscape.
Yeah, Newfoundland is, I would say, an extremely beautiful place. I'm standing right now in a historical place, and I'm going to show you the city from top. There's a water body that goes inside, and you can also see the city spanning around this area. This is an island, and it's surrounded by ocean, and it's amazing. It's a place worth visiting.
Jazakallah, Sadr Saab. I personally have never been to Newfoundland. Definitely motivated after what you're showing us to visit one day, inshallah. And to our viewers at home, I hope you also get an opportunity to visit. Jazakallah for your time. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah.
So I hope our viewers enjoyed that virtual trip from the Yukon territory all the way to Eastern Canada in Newfoundland. So that brings us to the next part of today's segment, which is the cooking segment. And for that, I want to introduce Zubair Janjua Saab. Zubair Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So Zubair Saab, I understand you're making a very special dish which is very unique to Canadians. And this is called Poutine.
Yes.
So tell us what, especially for our viewers who have no experience what poutine is, if you could just briefly explain what exactly is poutine.
So poutine is basically fries, cheese curds, and gravy.
So fries, cheese curds, and gravy. Now, I'm not a good cook myself, but if it's only those three ingredients, I'm hoping that someone like me could easily make it.
Yeah.
This is an easy dish.
It's easy dish, very easy dish. You just have to cut some potatoes. So make sure when you cut the potatoes, I'm using right now with skin. So wash thoroughly, so there's no dust, anything with the potatoes. But some people like to take the skin off.
So you're leaving the skin off,
Yeah.
okay. So basically just cut the potatoes into normal fries.
Yeah, and then fry them, and try to have the temperature set to 375 Fahrenheit.
And okay.
After
right
when
here.
they're done, and then we'll put cheese curd. We'll make the gravy, and then cheese curds and gravy on top.
Okay.
And after cutting the potatoes, make sure we have to wash them in cold water. So the starch, you don't need any starch on the potatoes right now.
So would you recommend, like you just
In cold water.
Ice cold water.
Ice cold water. Yeah.
Okay.
They get very crispy with.
So that's you know, it's these little things that sometimes people don't know, and it actually improves the dish. So it's important to actually wash them in ice cold water to make this dish crispy. And if I understand correctly, because the gravy goes on it and also melted cheese, it's important for the fries to be as crispy as possible.
Crispy,
you don't want it to get too soggy.
Yes.
So you're going to soak them in ice cold water, and then the next step would be to fry them.
Yeah.
And about how long do you think we'll be frying?
So it's all depend on your temperature. There's no time. It takes like 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes. But make sure when the fries are floating on the oil, that means they're done. They're crispy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I actually never knew that the fries have to be floating up and then it's done. And Zubair Saab, I wanted to ask you about the gravy. How is that process? Do you make it from scratch, or is there a simple way to make the gravy?
Yeah, so some people, they know people who know how to make gravy and stuff. They can make it from the meat and with this cornstarch and stuff. But if you don't know how to make gravy, you can go to any grocery store, find gravy mix, and pour some water in it.
So someone like me, you're a student, you know, you have busy work schedule, so you could buy the gravy. What is it? Gravy powder?
Yeah.
Gravy powder, and you just mix that with water, and the gravy is ready.
A lot of different kind of gravy powder. There's some beef, chicken, vegetarian. So it's all up to you which one you want to use, right?
Okay. Should I back up, or?
Yeah, we'll just fry some. So the oil was already at the right temperature. So we'll just make sure.
So now the next process, while this is frying, you're going to start the gravy?
Yeah, so we'll just start the gravy. So we already have some mix ready, so I'm just going to pour it and with the water.
Okay, so that's the gravy powder you can purchase at any supermarket.
I'm just going to add some water in it.
Sure. So Zubair Saab, while you're preparing the gravy and frying the fries, I'm going to take a round around the studio and come back to you, and we look forward to seeing Zubair Saab's final presentation of the poutine. Those of you at home, we're going to go to our next segment now, and for that we have Qasim Chaudhry Saab to help us out. Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Alaikum salam, alhamdulillah, I'm well. How are you, Rabbi?
So Qasim Saab, you know, I'm curious to know, I understand you're going to introduce us to a book, so what do you have for us today?
So I plan on taking you and the viewers on a spiritual journey with the help of this book, one of my favorite books on the existence of God.
Okay.
It's called The 10 Proofs of the Existence of God, written by Hazrat Musleh Maud, the second caliph of the promised Messiah, alayhi salam. But before I do so, I wanted to share a story. Back in high school, we were actually discussing the concept of the existence of God. And one of my classmates said, you know, he stood up and he boldly said that, I can't believe God because I can't see him. So I have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Right, so I started thinking that, you know, maybe he has a point. So a few days later, I went home and I started researching YouTube and articles, and I was just trying to figure out, you know, how can I answer this? So I'm on YouTube and I'm listening to all these debates, and they were so complex. They're so difficult. I didn't know what to retain and, you know, what was important information. So I sort of gave up and I didn't know what to do. Yeah. Fortunately, a few days later, I came across this book, 10 Proofs for the Existence of God. And what's so unique about Hazrat Musleh Maud is his ability to sort of break down these complex subjects and explain them in such a simple manner.
Okay.
You know, Umar, our lives are complex already.
Right.
Knowing our Creator should be a simple task. So we have to really thank Hazrat Muslim Maud for this.
So I wanted to ask you, this is definitely a very interesting topic, especially considering like in today's day and age, so many people, you know, it's such a common thing that we see on social media. People are making websites. I think when I was in Vancouver, I actually saw advertisements on bus ads for atheism, right? So you see that people are unfortunately like sometimes moving away from God. So how would you say that this book is very helpful to, you know, understand how to talk to an atheist?
Absolutely. You know, this book is truly timeless. It was published in 1913, and Hazrat Muslim Maud, he paints a beautiful picture. You know, even though this was published over a century ago, he's painting a picture of what we see today. Like you said, atheism is on the rise. And Hazrat Muslim Maud, he already explained that, you know, the youth and the educated class of society, their hearts are void of the love of God and the existence of God. And he said that he blamed the modernism or the modernity of society. We're racing towards materialism and greed, and all these things are, you know, ripping that concept of God from our heart. That's one of the things he explained at the beginning of the book. Now also, like you said, that atheists primarily, they deny this, the existence of a deity. Hazrat Muslim Maud also says there's another type of people who don't believe in God. However, they don't really physically mention it, right? These people, they're a little bit shy. They know that if they come outwardly and say it, there's some societal repercussions. So Hazur is really addressing these kind of people, and he helps them understand why God exists and how God exists using 10 very powerful arguments from the Holy Quran.
Okay, thank you so much for that. You know, a lot of people, especially even within the Jamaat, our youth, this is a topic that they have to deal with on a regular basis, especially young people that go to university. It may be a colleague, you know, at work. So I wanted to ask you, from these 10 proofs, are there, maybe I was wondering if you could share like a couple that, you know, you would like to highlight.
Absolutely. Hazrat Muslim Maud, he presents a verse of the Holy Quran, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. And essentially what this verse is saying is that Allah Ta'ala has sort of put it in our nature that we can distinguish between falsehood and truth, between justice and injustice, right? So for example, let's say your parents, you know, they tell you not to do a certain thing, and you go ahead and you do it. You know, we all have that natural instinct that, you know, I should have not done that. So that little voice, that inner voice, that's actually from God Almighty. And Hazrat Muslim Maud, he explains that atheists, they should not be able to distinguish between falsehood and truth, between justice and injustice, because for them, there is no higher power. But for people of belief, we are in awe of this higher power. So that's why that's naturally instilled in us. So that was one argument which I really enjoyed.
Jazakallah. And you know, it's interesting because even for an atheist, when they're face to face with death, you know, like their hands will come out to God. And so Jazakallah so much for, you know, sharing that with us. So there you have it, the 10 proofs for the existence of God by Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu. And you could find it on alislam.org. And Qasim Saab, you were saying that if a 12-year-old could read it, it applies. This book is perfect for all age groups. I would highly recommend it, especially to our youth, university-age students, post-secondary, those working with colleagues. Before I move on to the next segment, Adam Saab, I know you've been sitting there for a little while. I hope you don't have too much back pain. If you do, we could take care of that in the next segment. I wanted to ask you, did you get a chance to, did you have anything to add that you wanted to say about the book?
I did, in fact, read that book, and my daughter's 10 years old, and I've already started to introduce it to her because I did feel that it was presented in a very subtle and simple way for our youth. So I already began teaching it to my daughter.
Jazakallah. So that's very interesting. It's a good advice for a lot of parents that want to, you know, introduce this topic, which I think is important, especially in these days. Children are being, you know, exposed to these types of topics. So Jazakallah, Adam Saab. And as you know, we were talking about, I'm finally towards the last part of our segment. So Khizr Kareem Saab is currently a medical student at the University of Toronto. So whenever I meet a medical student, you must have been super smart in high school, you know. So welcome, Assalamu alaikum, Khizr Saab.
Welcome, Rabbi Saab. Thank you for having me.
We're so honored to have you here today, and it's such an interesting topic that applies to so many of us, right? Like, even myself, just a few days ago, like randomly, my back just starts hurting, and it never used to hurt before. And I remember in Jamia, like when we were studying, we used to be in the hostels, and Jamia students, young age, 18, 19, 20 years old, and I remember I used to see students actually move their mattresses, and I would ask them, like, why are you moving the mattresses? They're like, oh, we have back pain, and and I don't know if this is a myth, but sometimes people think, well, according to these students, they would lie down on the hard board to help their back. Well, I wanted to ask the expert, so if you could just explain what's the background of back pain, the causes, the people it affects?
Yeah, so back pain, if you take a survey of all the reasons why people come to the doctor's office, back pain is one of those things where it's very, very common. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that it extends from everybody, from older individuals to younger individuals. Mm-hmm. And the issue with back pain is that although we may think that it's something simple and easy, it causes a lot of morbidity in somebody's life, and it can lead to devastating consequences. Mm-hmm. So the most common cause of back pain is actually mechanical back pain. Okay. And mechanical back pain is essentially a very fancy word for saying just degenerative disc disease. So now if we look at the skeleton here, as you can see that, this is a vertebral column, and essentially your spine runs through it, right? And your spine runs through it, and depending on which level of the vertebral column, there's these spinal roots that come out, and that's where you essentially get a lot of the back pain, when there's impingement of these spinal roots. Now, 90% of back pain occurs because there's age-related processes that happen that causes any sort of narrowing or any sort of misalignment of these vertebral bones that causes you to have those sensations. And the issue is that, when patients come to the doctor's office, they request an MRI or a CT scan. Mm-hmm. Now, if we took an MRI or a CT of everybody in the studio, 90% of people would have some sort of disc-related changes. Mm-hmm. So my point to say is that, everybody has this. It's very, very common. Okay. And that's something that, that doesn't really help us if someone has these sort of issues. Okay. So that's essentially what's the root cause of back pain. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is that when patients say that, we have this back pain, they're so debilitated, they can't move, they can't go to work, they require that, I want a medication or I want something that's going to help fix this pain.
Tylenol, yeah.
Yeah, but the issue is that the best way to treat your back pain is movement. You have to move a lot. Now, the problem is that there's so many types of back pains. If we were to start just naming them, it will go into so many different tunnels. But the issue is that we need to break back pain down into two different types, and then depending on which type of back pain you have, there's certain exercises that you can do. Okay. So if you follow me, maybe we can discuss some of that.
Okay, so you're going to show us some exercises.
Yeah.
Are these exercises more related to preventing back pain, or if somebody has back pain, they should do?
That's an awesome question. So this is more for when you have that back pain.
Okay.
What you do. So the first thing that I want everybody to do, whoever's watching, is that if you have back pain right now, and if you can stand up, you have to ask yourself two questions. All right. And this is very easy, but it's very effective. So if you stand like this with your shoulder width apart, you place your hands on your hips, and keeping your back straight and your legs straight as well, bend forward. So you're only flexing at your hip. So if you bend forward, you have to ask yourself, does this hurt my back pain, or does it cause my back pain to get better? Mm-hmm. And then if you answer that question, the next step is you have to lean back, but keeping your hips straight. Okay. Right? So essentially the question is that if your back pain hurts when you bend forward, you have what's called pattern 1 back pain. Okay. And if it hurts when you lean back, you have pattern 2 back pain. Okay. So 90% of back pains can be categorized in these two different groups. Okay. Now, depending on which type of back pain you have, you can do certain exercises that target that specific back pain. And the principle is that whichever direction causes you pain, your stretching and your exercises have to be opposite that direction.
So if it's pattern 1, your exercises would be towards the opposite exercise.
Exactly.
Okay. That's easy.
That's easy, right? So that's why people get issues that, we're doing exercises, but it's not causing any relief. It's because you're not doing exercises specific to your type of back pain. Now the question is, what type of exercises do we do? Yeah. So as I mentioned, pattern 1 is when it hurts when you bend forward. Right. So exercises you want to do is that you want to do a lot of stretching going back, and you should hold it within 30 seconds. Okay. And essentially you have to do repetitions. So you do this for 30 seconds, take a couple seconds break, and you do it again for 30 seconds. And you do that multiple times throughout the day.
Okay, so these light exercises, and I see it's very
Yeah.
easy. It's not. I thought you were going to start doing push-ups or something. So, if you have pattern 1, which is when it hurts going forward.
Yeah.
So the exercise for that, do you have to put your hands on your hips or?
It helps to stabilize it.
Okay.
It helps to stabilize. You don't have to, but it's just one of those things we
Okay,
recommend.
so I'll put it
yeah.
on my hips and then basically just stand like that for like 30 seconds.
Exactly.
And that's 1 rep. And then you're saying just do that stretch throughout the day.
Exactly.
And it should improve that pattern 1 back pain.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
if it's the other one, then this is the exercise.
Exactly. That's very,
Okay.
very easy. If you're pattern 2, which means that it hurts when you stretch back,
Yeah.
you have to bend forward. As you can see, you can stretch your back like much further with that. You have to bend forward and keep that position for 30 seconds. So it's very, very easy, and it will solve 90% of back pain issues.
I thought this session would be so complex, but Jazakallah so much. Thank you for simplifying it, right? Like, I'm happy that even the kids out there that are watching, like, they could tell their grandparents, parents, this is how you fix the back pain. So Jazakallah Khizr Saab. So I'm going to move my way right here.
Yes,
I see you have a box here. So if you
Yes.
could just explain.
Right. So Rabbi Saab, as we alluded to earlier,
Yeah.
when somebody has back pain,
Yeah.
what's the first thing they look for?
Relief.
Exactly.
Right.
But usually what happens is that what they look for is a pillow. A lot of people think that, oh man, my back hurts, let me lie down, let me not move, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But if you look at all the studies that looked at people that did this type of treatment,
Yeah.
their back pain amplifies many-fold in their future. And this leads to debilitating consequences because you develop a learned behavior that I have this pain, and now my learned response is I have to rest. And that doesn't cause you to actually develop those molecular pathways that pretty much reduce that pain response. So you have to move, and that's the big, big message for anybody watching, that if you have back pain,
Yeah.
you have to move. And you can't,
normally people will be like, oh, I have to sit down after rest.
yeah, you can't,
Jazakallah, yeah.
exactly.
So Khizr Saab, thank you so much for that informative talk on back pain. To our viewers at home, I know you're wondering, how is that poutine looking? So we're going to check on Zubair Saab. I see he's making the final touches on that poutine dish. Zubair Saab, how are things looking?
We're almost done. The fries are done.
So after the fries are done, gravy is done, and then, oh yeah, you have to show us how to put the cheese curds on and get that cheese melted on the fries and the gravy. So what goes on first, the cheese or the gravy?
So first is cheese,
Okay.
and then gravy. That's your
Also, if you
fry.
could just tell our viewers the difference. I see these are cheese curds. This is what,
So in
mozzarella?
Canada, cheese curds are easily available. But some countries, if you don't have cheese curd, you can also use mozzarella cheese. Cheese curds is it's easy to melt, and the squeezy now is you want for cheese. So we'll just put some cheese curds. Try to level the cheese.
And
curds.
it's important to do this at this point when the fries have come.
Fries have to
directly-
be hot because it helps to melt the cheese. Also
Okay.
the gravy.
So I know there's a lot of our viewers from around the world, maybe they're not familiar with cheese curds. So mozzarella cheese is a good substitution if you don't have cheese curds available. So it's finally coming together. And that's it, huh?
That's it. That's your poutine.
So to all of our viewers, this is Canadian poutine. It's a very simple dish, but I do have to warn you, it is extremely good. And the reason I say I have to warn you is because obviously, if you start eating it too much, you may end up gaining a few pounds. And a lot of us in Canada know that, so we're very cautious when we eat poutine, something once in a while. But Zubair Saab, thank you so much. That dish looks beautiful and excellent dish for those of you who want to try something new for your iftar dinner. So Jazakallah, and I hope we see you again in the future.
Inshallah.
So to our viewers, we're coming towards the end of today's program. Adam Saab, are you a big fan of poutine?
Oh yeah, I can't wait to try with that.
Yeah, trust me. I know you can't see the kitchen. It looks really tasty. So Adam Saab, Jazakallah so much for joining us today. And I really want to thank Zubair Saab, Qasim Saab for enlightening us with the book. Khizr Saab, that was amazing. I actually learned a lot with that back pain situation. And I wanted to thank you all at home for joining us today for Ramadan with MTA. I hope the best for all of you, and try to join us for our next episode. Until then, stay safe, take care. Assalamu alaikum.
रूहों में उतरते हैं सदा मुहिम हक के अल्लाह